customers tell me this, I'm just like, that makes no sense. Like, here's what you need to do to solve the problem, and this is what's going to work and the way that we're going to tell it. Because the most expensive video is the one that doesn't work.
On today's show, I am joined by Mark Wonderlin, the founder of Mosaic Media Films. In this episode, we will uncover tips on starting a business in a new city without contacts, defining your niche and having a clear, unwavering focus, the importance of delegation in scaling your business, and letting mentors inspire you to forge a better path towards success. Now, as a seasoned entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in the video marketing industry, Mark brings a unique blend of creativity, marketing acumen, and strategic thinking to the table. His dedication to excellence and innovation has earned Mosaic its reputation as Austin, Texas's highest-rated video production company, making him a trusted source of inspiration for aspiring entrepreneurs and industry professionals alike. So whether you're looking to learn about the power of visual storytelling or seeking insights into building a successful business in the digital age, this episode promises to deliver. Hey, good afternoon, Mark. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Absolutely, Joe. Thanks a ton for having me.
Yeah, man. When I dug into, your bio and just kind of like the cool stuff you've accomplished, I always kind of start with people in the beginning. And I saw that you went to college in Illinois. I mean, you're in Austin now. I believe you had like a career in digital marketing, maybe on the corporate level after graduating college. So I was kind of curious about that path and what sort of had you go from that sort of like traditional corporate maybe route you could have stayed with to kind of pursue entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting. So I grew up outside of Chicago, went to Eastern Illinois, and then right out of college, I got a job working for a company called Shut Sports. And if you're in the football industry, you probably know who they are. They, make football helmets and face guards. However, they're more of a manufacturing company than like a marketing machine, like like Nike or anything like that. So when you're more manufacturing focused and not marketing focused, you usually have a small team. So I had like exposure to everything when it came to digital marketing and traditional advertising. So I've done package design that you probably could still see in Dick's Sports today. Print ads, website, SEO, social media, photography, obviously video. And to be honest with you, when I got into that corporate job, I thought that I would just work my way up the corporate ladder. So kind of in the, early 2000s, I grew up in the 80s. So like that was kind of like what you do to be successful. You go to college, you get a job, you work your way up, and then you're like the CEO one day. But really the person that impacted me the most in kind of pursuing entrepreneurship was the CMO at that particular time that worked in the company. He was a great mentor, incredible marketing master when it comes to product marketing. And he said, video is really the trend, and he could see the trend. And he said, I really encourage you to get as good as you can with this and look at opportunities for you to maybe do something beyond the company and go off on your own, because that's what I think is going to be successful for you personally. That's the insight that I would give you personally. I really took that to heart because he's such a phenomenal guy and I really respected his opinion. And this was right around the time when DSLR filmmaking was kind of coming out. And it was just like perfect synergy for me personally, because I really wanted to kind of explore entrepreneurship, and DSLR really made it capable of that. I got in a little bit before that, but the DSLR revolution really kind of helped create more cinematic like video content and more of a cost-effective, easy-to-use package like a typical camera, like is a photo camera. And that's really how I got started early on. And then I moved to Austin with that desire to kind of start a company. And I came here with like no friends, no leads, no connections, and just kind of dove into it from having a little bit of a side hustle in Illinois, but then kind of fully transitioning to kind of solopreneur when I first landed in Austin, 13 years ago or so.
Yeah. So this guy actually took you aside and was like, I think this is a better career path for you. Did you have interest at that time in video? Were you shooting short films and stuff, or was it just kind of like out of the blue?
No, it's actually something I did as a part of my many tasks.
Okay.
And he kind of just said, put a lot of your energy into video because I see us using it not only the company, but this is a skill set that you could take up, above and beyond if you ever want to pursue other things in your life and your career professionally. And so at the time, we were doing like, a little bit of product video content. I did some action and lifestyle stuff, just getting exposure to that. And then I also was kind of working with a couple local businesses in a small town that kind of gave me the opportunity. And I did it, for as cheap as humanly possible, more for the experience and not necessarily for the revenue. Because when there's an exchange of like any monetary amount, it's like validation that like what you're doing is valuable to somebody. And that was like incredibly empowering to do that at kind of that early in my career.
What was it about Austin compared to like, okay, I could stay in Chicago, I could go to New York and go to LA, probably the typical things 13 years ago or whatever that,
Yeah.
people would think, maybe not so much nowadays, so much filmmaking goes on in New Mexico and Georgia. But what was it about Austin? Had you been there before that you fell in love with?
No, I haven't, but I've always liked Texas in general, just like the idea of Texas
Hmm.
and like everything I've heard about it peripherally from just what do people know about Texas. And I just like that. And then I liked when I came here and visited it, I remember it's very interesting because I remember this exact moment and it just like burned in my mind. I was looking at apartments and I went to like the highest level and they have like this balcony area that's all enclosed. And I remember this breeze coming through and like looking at the hill country and like seeing the sunset and there was like an infinity pool and I was like, this feels like a vacation. This is so incredible. And the more I kind of spent the weekend there, it just became so incredible. And I think that's why so many people come here, not only for the tech environment, but it's got hill country, it's got lakes, it's got great climate, the food is incredible, and it's just an awesome, awesome place. And I really love it. I'm happy to call it home right now as part of my life.
Yeah, it's a business friendly state. You could kind of
Yeah.
go on and on, right?
They have a very kind of local vibe that I found out pretty quickly. When I started, I was doing a lot of networking and it had a very local hometown feel that like people like to do businesses with other Austin businesses. And now it's obviously changed a lot in the last like 12, 14 years. But I still think that it has that same type of feel of like wanting to work locally with other businesses.
Yeah. So you get out there, right? You're a graduate, or you graduated at this point. You're working, I believe, 4 years or so in your marketing role.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was like 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I was in kind of the corporate world before I
Yeah.
transitioned to kind of being on my own. Yeah.
So when you get out to Austin and you don't know anyone, you don't have any contacts, but you're there to really start your company. How do you start picking up work? What's the sort of strategy when you're like, okay, I love it here, but how do I make money?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like the challenge of every solopreneur, right? You want to get business, but no one knows you and you don't have a lot of money to be running ads. And even if you do, you have to like understand how to run ads effectively. So for me, it was more about tapping into that local market and meeting people, building relationships. And what worked well for me was just going to networking events. And I used to go to like 3 or 4 a week. And the interesting thing is I've met really, really good strategic partners who are still my friends today. Like I sometimes think about like how crazy my life would be if I didn't meet those people. Like one guy, for instance, I met and it was at a networking group and we randomly got paired up with like a group of 4 people. And that guy is now one of my closest friends. He runs SEO for me and he's helped me so much personally and professionally. And I think, gosh, what would my life be like if I never went to that meetup group and met him? It's crazy.
Yeah. So, well, I agree. I mean, networking, going to meetups, going whatever, your town's calling those sort of get-togethers are pretty crucial for just again making you feel like it's not you're not alone. You're not the only person out there trying to build whatever company you're trying to get out in the world or in the city, and it kind of gives you the reassurance that hey, I'm not alone. Other people here are supportive, but I can also help support them, or we can kind of collaborate, like you said, or make a lifelong friend, sort of like you did. So, how are you picking up? Like, I would think when I hear video production, money because you have to buy gear And as you're getting started, you may not have the funds. So what kind of services are you offering in the beginning? Or maybe you did have the funds. I don't know. How was that time when you were trying to get going?
Well, on the gear side, what I did was I kind of incrementally purchased things as my skill set and revenue increased. I'm a little bit of an anomaly when it comes to equipment, especially on the earlier end with most camera people. I see most filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers, entrepreneurs, they have this idea that like if I spend $15,000 on a camera, then the phone is going to ring and people are going to love me and it's so incredible. That's actually not really what happens. That's not the reality. That's what kind of the gurus teach you, but that's not what happens. That's what they sell. So I took a total opposite approach and I just basically got the nicest gear that I possibly could based on the person that really trained me on filmmaking. And then I incrementally added up stuff, but I never got into the whole, I'm going to work so I can buy the next piece of equipment. So that's kind of how I started. I started small and I just started with a camera, a couple lenses and a monopod. And that was like, and then some audio, some basic audio equipment. And that was enough to kind of get me up and running and create a really good video that people would think would be several times more expensive. And I kept that kind of gear set for a while before I eventually ended up upgrading.
Did you have a space at this point, or was it like everything's in your apartment that you would take when you do, assignments?
Yeah, absolutely. So at that time, yeah, I was living in an apartment and I would just have all my gear in a relocated area. I didn't have like a studio or anything like that because if I was filming, it was on the location, right? So I'm filming for a business. So it's at their place, setting up at their, plant, factory, office, whatever the case would be. So it didn't really like make it sense to have a studio. Every now and then I would do a studio project and we just would rent it or add it to the invoice, which is kind of like what we do now. But most of the time we're kind of on site, live action filming, documentary style for clients.
You have a slogan that I saw, right? Like helping business owners finally get people to understand what they do so they can turn viewers into buyers with professional video content, right? Like I read that and I was like, oh, that's like, I totally get what you do. It's like impactful. It kind of like drives home exactly the service I'm going to expect. At that time when you're getting started, are you coming up with this kind of stuff like slogans, websites, or is it just kind of like, okay, DIY till, again, as I get money, I'm going to feed it back into the business?
Yeah, I mean, when I originally started, it was more about like, I'm going to create a really good video for you and less about the tangible result that they're wanting, which is now kind of really how we're positioned. And I've kind of combined my knowledge of marketing through my career, not only starting off in the corporate world, but actually I owned a digital marketing company where we trained aspiring filmmakers and learned a lot of more contemporary digital marketing strategies. And we use that when we're talking to clients because for our type of clientele, it's typically like a B2B company and they're looking to solve a problem that they have. It's either communicating their value offer, explaining, what makes them uniquely different and how they can solve people's problems, enhancing their brand, and really increasing their conversion. So like when we talk with clients, or like when I have conversations with them, it's really trying to understand like, how is video going to help solve this problem and what type of video is going to help solve that problem? And how do we need to create it to speak to the audience that this is going to resonate with? So that's kind of the approach that we take. I think a lot of typical video companies or camera guys, they're like, well, you need a video? Okay, so that's going to be 3 hours of filming with 2 cameras, and then we'll do audio. But if you want me to use my red camera, it's like an additional $700 a day. And I'm like, I think these guys just all went to like a conference and learned this. But it's just like, when customers tell me this, I'm just like, that makes no sense. Like, here's what you need to do to solve the problem, and this is what's going to work and the way that we're going to tell it. Because the most expensive video is the one that doesn't work.
Right. That's good. That's a good way to put it. So like at the time that as you're going, like meetups, like you mentioned, what are other strategies that you're bringing into the mix to pick up new clients and new business?
Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of it was networking, referrals, and really networking from that way. When I started to really grow the company and be more of the get out of the solopreneur aspect, I started doing a lot more advertising and marketing. So one of the first thing I did was started doing SEO. And that was with the guy I was telling you with earlier that I met at an event. And we were friends for years. And I said, I'm at the point where I really want to start doing SEO. And it took about 9 to 12 months to start to see any traction in that. I really stuck with it because I believed in it. So then I was basically getting repeat business, referral business, SEO started coming in, and then I coupled that with pay-per-click and retargeting. And then, now we do a lot other things. We do Facebook ads. We have a newsletter. Obviously there's podcasting. We have a, pretty robust content strategy for social media that isn't necessarily designed to really get ads. It's more of like education, value, and just credibility is what we do social for. We're not really doing it for lead gen as far as just organic social posting.
I think it was your sites mention, like, you look at every aspect of a buyer's, client buyer's journey and their marketing strategy, but it's to develop a video success system. So for me and for people listening, what does that entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really like exploring what their funnel's like and what the buyer's journey looks like. So like, how are you currently getting business now, right? So is it through paid ads on Facebook, or is it Google search ads, or is it mostly one-to-one conversations in a sales enablement situation, right? So like, once we understand that, then we know what types of videos are going to work, and then we can then create an effective funnel, right? So like, if someone's on pay-per-click, they have a higher commercial intent, right? So they've identified they have a problem, they're actively searching for someone, or they're trying to get research. So at that point, we would send them to a landing page with a video that's relative to the search they're doing, and create something that's 60 to 90 seconds in duration based on what search they're doing. Then if they convert, whether it's booking a call, requesting more information, they'd have another video kind of telling them about the call, and then another video that is providing additional value to them. So the buyer's journey is that process, and we're trying to guide them through a series of videos to increase the speed of trust and educate them about what they can do to solve that problem for them. Now, that strategy is going to be totally different than like social media. So take Facebook, for instance. People are scrolling on their feed, and they're most likely not going to want like a flashy, polished video that we would produce. I know this because we've tested it ourselves and we've tested it for clients. Sometimes they can work depending on the brand, but most of the time on Facebook, because it's more of an interrupt, the native kind of, I call them kind of cringy selfie videos.
Yeah, selfie videos
actually perform better than sizzle reels. And I know this because we've tested it multiple times for our own business. And, if you live in Texas, you've probably seen a cringy video of me talking about a drone video that's running right now. And that got a like 3 times higher click-through rate than our reel, which shows up all the stuff we do. So like, that strategy is different. So we're creating variables at different angles of content that you can do. Either you do it yourself, or it's content that we've created, and then you're trying to test that. And then that takes them to a landing page with a video or an offer that's a little bit higher quality, because now they've realized it's an ad and they've entered into that kind of brand experience with you. So we want it to be higher quality. So that strategy is different than like pay-per-click. So those are kind of some of the things that we talk about when we're exploring what type of video do you need, and then what marketing strategy is going to be the best. So then we know what kind of format to create, what duration, and then what kind of angle or approach to connect to that ideal client that you're looking for. Yeah, for that type of approach, it's more effective because of the marketing. People feel like it's more native. It's less of an ad. In a lot of ways, they're kind of, in some instances, they're kind of getting tricked, because they're just looking like it's a normal person, and because people will just tune off ads. They look like it's a normal person, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, maybe I do need this product. And then they'll click on it and go to like a sales page, So like, one of the things that we're doing right now that's kind of more of a hybrid approach to what we do is like customer testimonials or case story videos are some of our most successful videos, because they're very, they have a long shelf life. Like, it's not something you use once. You could use it 5 years from now. It's still relative. It positions, instead of you talking about your business, it's someone else talking about your business, and they can be really, really powerful. So we'll do like high-end lifestyle videos that are very flashy and polished and take a full day. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, which is like the selfie video, which is like, hey, everybody, I had a great experience working with this company. We spent $100,000 on the ad with them and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you're in a B2B environment, that is just not going to cut it. Like, that's good for B2C, but like not B2B. So like we've kind of created more of a hybrid approach where we can give that authentic feel that like a selfie video has, doing like a recorded call kind of like this on like a Zoom or like a Riverside and things like that. But then couple that with like a professional interview that's like, 20 minutes long that we distill down to 60 seconds and add a lot of animation and graphics. So you have like a distilled video in like 60 seconds that tells a compelling story about the person's experience and transformation, but it still has that authentic feel of like, hey, we just talked to them and they were at their house and we had a casual conversation, and this is kind of the highlights of it, and that's something that we do right now pretty extensively, and it's been really, really popular.
Yeah, and I imagine like, every client's going to be different. Some are going to be very amenable to suggestions. I always wonder, like, for yourself, dealing with clients that might be more hands-on, like maybe they want to be involved in everything. Maybe they're telling you how to shoot something or how you should light something or how it should be. How do you deal with that? Because I would imagine, again, there's a lot of psychology that goes behind it. I don't know, maybe you've never been in those situations, but if so, how do you kind of tackle that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in situations like that personally, but now my producer kind of manages that a lot, and I could be more grateful for her because she has like the patience of a saint. However, the way that I always look at the project, whether I'm helping with it or my producer is, we always look at it like a collaboration. And there are some clients that need a little bit more support, help, guidance, and want to be more actively involved. And we actually really encourage that simply because at the end of the day, it's their video, it's representing their brand, and we want them to be happy. We'll provide a lot of creative insight and ideas for scripting and things like that. But when it comes down to it, it's really their video. And a lot of times where it's challenging is like when we're working with a tech company, because most tech companies, they'll have a tendency of saying things like, we're a leader in innovation for revolutionary technology that's pushing forth the boundaries of what is capable in today's, unique world. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? It's just like a jumble of words. So like what we help do is like, we need to distill this conversation down to like a fifth grade level. So it's like really clear on like what you're doing, like we're advancing technology. We're helping you X, like really, really clear, really, really succinct. So we'll do that up to a certain extent. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that they're happy with the final product, and that everyone on board, whether it's C-level management or whoever is the decision maker, is content with what we're doing.
You had mentioned shooting client testimonials and content for your website. Mm-hmm. How involved are you or were you in your own personal, your company's branding, your strategy for your brand logo website? Yeah. Is that something that because you do have a marketing background, but again, you can't be an expert in everything. Is that something that you sort of develop in tandem with outside partners or internally with your team or even yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done it internally with my team, and I work with a lot of creative designers and copywriters and marketers throughout the years to kind of refine our message. And it's always constantly refining. So if you look at the site today and you look at it 2 months from now, the headlines change, there are different designs because we're constantly testing things that are like resonating with the audience. So it's been really a combination of those different factors. The name itself, I do have to give my brother a little bit of credit, because when I was originally coming up with name ideas, it's like really hard to come up with a name, and then also find a URL for it. That's
true.
Part.
The .com you want, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. That exactly. So my brother actually came up with the name Mosaic, and I fell in love with it right away because video, in essence, is a mosaic, right? It's a combination of many things that come together to have a beautiful picture. And in the case of video, it's music, it's sound design, it's visuals, it's animation, it's narration, all those things kind of coming together to tell a compelling story.
So no, I was just curious because it's definitely tough a lot of times with branding because someone's going to land on that page, especially 13 years ago when we didn't have so much. It made me think like, look, it's obviously impossible to be everywhere at once. You mentioned, you have a team now. Beginning, you were like a one person show. When you're bringing on people, how do you sort of ensure like the same standards and values that you set? And it's gonna, obviously it's a generic question in the sense of like you always want people, but everyone has a different approach on how they hire. So how do you sort of like, again, make sure they uphold the same standards and quality of, production that you have?
For me, it's all about the right people in the right seat and then aligning with the core values that we have. So our core values are grow daily. You always should be pushing yourself to learn more, constant communication. You should be good at communicating with other people and our clients. 110, that you're really willing to give 110%, in everything that you do. And like big heart, which is really having gratitude that we get to work in a really cool environment. We get to connect with amazing businesses and help change people's lives through the videos that we're creating. Usually when I'm doing an interview process, I'll ask them these things in more of a situational way to see if it's kind of aligned, like give me an example of ... Then that kind of gives me a little bit of insight into if they'd be a good fit culturally. Fortunately, because of my type of business as well, the proof is in the pudding, right? When it comes to editing and when it comes to filmmaking, it's like,
Yeah,
let me see what you've done.
you can tell. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've interviewed a lot of editors and I will give them the same project, the same criteria, and I'll get wildly different videos. In some instances, I've been a little like disappointed, but relieved where I've given them a project and I'm like, this guy interviewed great. He was awesome. I can't wait to see what he's going to do. He's going to totally crush it. And then to get it back and it's like, oh my gosh, why did you choose that soundbite? Oh, the pacing of this is horrible. The music is just not fit the brand. And then you can find out pretty instantaneously if they're a good fit. So the type of work that I'm in helps a lot mitigating, bad potential hires.
But you mentioned, I think your producer, she's definitely helping, assisting you, other team members, right? How do you feel like those people play like a role? Your brother helps you with the name, right? Like people who kind of like come in and help with the achievements or the growth of your company. How pivotal have those people been?
Absolutely, unequivocally, huge amounts. I guess directly to answer that, when I first started and when I was doing things myself, I always felt like people bought me, and that was a big part of it. My personality, my energy, the quality of the work, that's kind of how it was. And then once I started to kind of slowly let go a little bit, I realized that it's really the art and craft and the approach that I take and instilling that same values and quality into everything that we do. And in some instances, I'm like, this is like better than what I could have done. And I'm like blown away by my team's ability from a cinematic approach, from the filming to the way it was produced and the way the script was written to the way it was edited and polished. It just makes me feel awesome to be able to have, have a group of creative people that can do as good, if not better, than what I would have been able to do myself.
Yeah, I mean that's hard. It's hard to replace like the vision you had, and you're so hands on in the beginning. Obviously, you take on more responsibilities. As you're growing as a company and just perfecting your craft, video marketing, all that kind of stuff. And it's probably hard to say. I was going to say like, what is like I don't even want to say a week or a month, maybe even a year. I was going to ask like what a typical week might look like just for your role now. Is there any sort of like similarities depending on the week?
I get a lot of variety in what I do, and based on all the personality tests that I've taken, that's a big part of like what makes me happy is having variety and also a little bit of structure. And that's why I think personally I've been really drawn to video because it's the structure of creating video in a specific way, but it's the variety of the type of clients and content that we create. Week to week for me is dramatically different today than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago I was filming, editing, doing a lot of the marketing and sales, and I was the quintessential solopreneur, wearing all the hats. But now my role is predominantly on the sales and marketing side. So I get a lot of variety as far as like really on the sales and marketing, but also the creative. So a typical week for me is like meeting with clients about potential new projects, showing up on a shoot for an hour or two just to check in on things, working and collaborating with different marketing people, having the opportunity to do stuff like this and be on podcasts, reviewing video stuff that we've done, having meetings with my team. So really having that variety of where most of my hours are spent on sales and marketing and thinking about the vision for the company and the here and now, as far as like, what are we doing now and where are we going? But then also having the ability to be involved in the creative process from a high level vision at the start of the project, and then kind of at various milestones, let me take a look at that edit. Where are we at with this on this shoot and things like that. So I meet with my team formally once a week, and we go over all of our active projects, and I kind of get a pulse on like where the status are and things. And then I'll get involved or not involved depending on what the job requires. But most of the time, I'm not really in the weeds at all with any level of stuff at a granular level with specific decisions that are being made.
A lot of entrepreneurs I talk to will deal with burnout and or just mental exhaustion, right? Because they are, whether they're not on site, they're, like you mentioned, still thinking about it on the weekends and always on their minds, even to the point where it's hard to even disconnect and enjoy time with their family or friends or whatever it might be. But is there stuff that you do personally to sort of like disconnect, whether it's like, hobbies, activities, just to kind of like take a break from the company, or is it just too hard because there's always, things going on?
No, I absolutely do, because I don't want to have, I want to have a fun, successful, happy life. I have two kids, one's 15 and one is 9. So that time with them is like incredibly precious. So I like try to departmentalize as much as I possibly can. So there's things that I do like with friends, there's things I do with my kids, there's things that I do, for myself on a regular basis to kind of give myself structure and routine and departmentalize. Like for me, my big thing is in the morning, I found out that the best routine for me is take my kids to school and then go to the gym right away. So this way I'm like taking care of myself. I feel good. It's a great start to the day. I'll come back and then I'll get going on work. And then when I pick my kids up at school later on, I really try to departmentalize work as much as possible. And I'm like focused on them. And we're spending quality time together, doing some type of activity, hanging out, and doing really cool stuff. You got to put it in the calendar, because I'll go to like events or I'm in a couple business groups and we'll be like, oh man, we got to hang out, and I have a boat membership. So one of the things I do is say that once a month we got to get everybody together in the boat. We can put it in the calendar. If you can, great. If you can make it, great. If you can't, no problem. So like scheduling things when you're there present with someone, with friends, is so much better than just like the someday thing, because you'll lift your head up and it's 6 months later and you haven't done that. I found that like trying to have some sense of balance and not sacrifice everything, because like for me with my kids, it's like they're only going to be young for so long. So I really like to hang out with them, even if it's watching a TV show together. It doesn't have to be like a grand, special weekend trip or a vacation, even though we do that stuff. But even the little things like that, is just personally really important to me. So I always try to put that first above the next email or the next this or the next that, because there's always going to be something else that's on your list.
Yeah, we definitely are similar in that regard. Same with the kids, because same difference. I pick up my wife takes to school, I pick up, but like, making sure that you're trying to have everything done. And I'm also 100% with you when it comes to the workout. I like, as soon as they leave for school, it's like, I have to get it done. I'll even get like just irritated, like just, it's on my mind the whole day. I feel the same way. Getting it out of the way right away is the best. That just clears your head for the day too, I think. Just like a fresh, ready to roll, take on whatever it is, but get that out of the way for me. Physically is obviously good, but mentally as well. Going back to like the beginning of this discussion, when you came out to Austin, right, and started this company, if you had to do anything differently, is there like one or whatever, many things you would change or maybe do differently if you could start it back again?
Yeah, if anything, it's all about like focus, right? And that's what I really tried to do. Someone was telling me, what you need is you need like multiple streams of revenue. You need multiple streams of revenue. And I'm just like, what I need is like one stream of like really, really good revenue. And then that compounds to something else. Cause it's like plucked from this idea that like millionaires, multimillionaires have like 8 streams of revenue. And it's just like, yeah, but it wasn't 8 right away. They're not doing 8 things all at once. It's like you get one thing working and that's, producing money. And then you have all this capital that you can now invest into something else and get that working and so on. So like for me, it's all about focus. There was one point in my life where I had like 3 things going on. And I was having this great conversation with a friend of mine who was like my original camera mentor. His name's Michael Gebbin. And we still talk. We're still friends today. And we work with each other now. We even owned a business together. And there was this one time in my life, I had a digital marketing company that I was doing and trying to train aspiring filmmakers. I was doing a little bit of video stuff. And I was thinking about doing Amazon products as well. Like, oh, you can just be an Amazon white label. And I got caught into that world. And I'm kind of like splintered because I had this like, multiple streams of revenue income. Like, I can get this running and make money there. And then I can also focus on this. I can also focus on this. So like, just for me personally, I found that like clarity and focus is like the most important. And I just got to the point where I was like, I'm going to go all in on video and focus on that and forget about the digital marketing stuff, forget about the Amazon stuff, and just do what I really know how to do really well and be crystal clear on my goals. And when I did that, things like really skyrocketed. Like I went to Richard Branson's island on Necker and filmed for this entrepreneur group. I went to Costa Rica twice. I went to Asia and filmed like a docuseries. I went to 5 different countries. I was like making a lot of business in local Austin. I started marketing. I hired my first employee, and it was all from like clarity and focus on one thing and one goal rather than trying to do several things half-ass.
That's great advice. Yeah. I think that's a lot of people, like you said, they start to figure, okay, if I can do a little bit here, a little bit there, and you're giving 25% to this, 25% to that. And if versus just 100%, right? To one thing. I was going to ask you like advice you might have for, entrepreneurs thinking like, yeah, I'd like to start a business, but I'd like to have the longevity that, that Mark here has had. Which is, and you're a young guy, like this thing can go on for many, many more decades. You did say focus. Is that like the core piece of advice you would give someone about, focusing in on what you wish you did, almost 15 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess number 1 would be clarity and focus. Another thing too, that's really important is like sticking with something. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, and I, including myself, kind of fall in the trap where like you start to work on something, you have a lot of energy, and then you basically, when it starts to get hard, then you get distracted by a shiny object and do something else. And that could be in the form of, this business doesn't work, I'm going to start another one. Or it could be, I'm, not focusing on one type of marketing and then look at another one and hope that that's going to solve your problems. And there's this endless cycle that I think a lot of people fall into the trap of, me included. Another thing too is just like people that maybe are thinking about being entrepreneurs and want to start off in the solo world. The best advice that I would give is, understand what you're getting yourself into, because there is a lot that's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of hats that you're going to have to wear that you don't realize. And it's a lot harder work than a lot of people expect. I think a lot of times, people are like, oh, these guys that own their businesses are making all this money and this is, blah, blah, blah. And, the kind of the news gives you that perspective, but like you don't realize how much work goes into it. I think as an entrepreneur, you do things that you don't expect. Like for me, like things like accounts payable and reading a P&L and managing finances and paying people and, managing like marketing and expend and things like that are all like new skill sets that I had to learn along the way. So I guess that's a little bit of advice that I would give for people thinking about entrepreneurship or business in general.
Yeah, believe it in yourself, right?
Yeah. Right?
That's the way to be. It's if you can't, you have to really just have that vision and believe that you can do it. Like you said, stick with it. I mean, that's huge advice. How about for people who want to connect with you, whether it's Mosaic or you personally? Are you active on any social media channels? If someone wants to follow your particular, and of course, and your company's website.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they want to follow me personally, it's basically LinkedIn, Mark Wonderlin. We post like 3 times a week there. I don't personally do the post, so you'd have to like DM me if you need anything. But my team will, put social stuff out. But anything from a company side, It's mosaicmediafilms.com. And we're on all, major social platforms and stuff. They're interested in like learning about video, but they don't know where to start. There's a really great page on our website, mosaicmediafilms.com/resources. And there's like guides, quizzes, video content. So if you're kind of thinking about video for your business, but you don't know kind of where to start, that's a good spot to get some education and some free tools to see if video is the right step for you and kind of how to take some good actions to get going with it.
Yeah, no, your site's awesome. I like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed like the experience of being on your site. So it's definitely a lot to get from it for people visiting. And for today, like thank you so much because it's been really cool. Like I'm glad we connected. Love to stay in touch with you. Had a good time talking with you today, and had a lot of great insights and inspirations for people.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Joe. This has been a blast.